Hello everyone, my name is Heather and welcome to the channel Bookables. Today I am talking about a lot of thriller books that I have read recently. Today I'm talking about 5 of them. I have been reading a ton of thrillers. I'm a mood reader, and thrillers have been what I've been in the mood for lately, so we're going to talk all about them. I'm not going to spoil anything for any of these books, so in case you don't want to know the plot twist, you won't know. I'm just going to tell you what the book is about, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and what I rated it. So as always with these videos, I'm going to leave timestamps down below for each individual book in case you want to hear about that particular book. The 5 thrillers we will be talking about today are Girl Forgotten by Karin, The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, The Butcher by Jennifer Hiller, 2 books by Katherine Ryan Howard, The Nothing Man, and her newest released Runtime. So, like I said, timestamps will be down below, but without further ado, let's get into it. The first book, like I said, I wanted to talk about is Girl Forgotten by Karin. Technically, this is the second book in the Pieces of Her series. Pieces of Her came out like 3 or 4 years ago. It's been a while, and then the Netflix show came out, which I am not a fan of the Netflix show whatsoever. As much as I love Toni Collette, that show just was not that great. I do think you do need to read the first book to kind of get some backstory. The second book really doesn't follow up on the first book by any means. It's a different storyline, but we have, one of our main characters is in the first book. Now, what I'm going to tell you about the book, I'm not going to spoil the first book at all. I'm just going to be very vague on it, but in retrospect, I do think you need to read Pieces of Her. Pieces of Her has been the only Karin Slaughter book I've read since this one because she writes really gritty, dark kind of thrillers, and I can only do that for so much because I'm scared to get. But either way, Girl Forgotten is all about our character named Andrea, who again was in the first book, Pieces of Her. And she's now a U.S. Marshal, and she just graduated, and she is assigned like her first case to help this judge that's in, I forget what, Longbill Beach, and the judge has been getting death threats, so she is kind of assigned to protect her, and so she goes there, but she's also on another mission because there was this murder in Longbill Beach in 1982 about a girl named Emily who was brutally murdered, and she was pregnant at the time. But she also has this other case. In 1982, Emily Vaughn was getting ready for the prom, and she has a secret, and she gets murdered. So Andrew is kind of trying to protect the judge while also trying to solve this, like, unsolved murder case from many, many years ago. So we have those 2 kind of storylines going on. Overall, I would give this a 4 out of 5. I think I gave Pieces of Her a 4 out of 5. I do really like Karin Slaughter's writing. It's dark, it's mysterious. The ending of this one wasn't a huge payoff as much as I wanted it to be. I kind of wanted a little bit more oomph with the ending, but I will say my favorite part of the story was definitely the flashbacks to Emily in 1982. You trying to piece together what really happened to her. I had speculations, things like that. I did enjoy that aspect. I also really enjoyed Andrea, seeing her as a U.S. Marshal. Like, she kicks butt and doesn't take, like, she does what she needs to do. So I appreciated that. I wish I could talk more about it, but I feel like the more I talk about it, I'll kind of let something from Pieces of Her slip, and I really think it's a book best to go into not knowing much with all thrillers because you want to be thrilled. You don't want to know the plot twist. You don't want to know the many, many things. And if also you've watched the show Pieces of Her and you're like, oh, I don't know if I should read the book, read the book. The book is way better than the show. I won't say it's like a perfect thriller by any means, but like didn't do a good job of grasping it, if you get what I'm saying. So overall, I did really enjoy this one, and I would recommend it. So again, like I said, read the first book and then read this one. I think you'll really enjoy it. Next up, we have The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. Ashley Winstead is an author that I read for the very first time this year. She released In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, which is my favorite thriller I've read this year. So I was very much anticipated her newest release, and it is dark. This is a dark book. This is a book, like, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, I could see myself rereading one day. This one, no. This book is very convoluted. It's kind of hard to explain. So basically, again, with a lot of thrillers, we have 2 timelines kind of going on here. We have a character named Shay, and in college, Shay got into kind of like a cult, if you will. It's not like kind of a, I don't know if there's like a typical cult, but it was crazy, I'll say that. So she got into it, and her and her best friend actually escaped it on their senior year of college, and they vowed to like never go back, never like talk about it, kind of just let it be the past and never like look back again. And so now, many years later, Shay is married. She's kind of doing the suburban housewife thing, and she hears on her favorite podcast that actually a friend that she went to high school with and grew up with is doing, that her best friend was found murdered at the college campus. And she's like, what? You know, not only is my friend murdered, but she went back to like where we went to college at, where we said we would never go back again. Like they said they would never, I think, go to New York ever again. So in this book, Shay decides to team up with a guy that's doing the podcast to investigate Laurel's death. That's her friend's name that died. And so they, you know, go into it, and it gets much more darker. I'll just say, it says, but when a world built for men to rule it, both inside the cult and outside of it, is justice even possible? And if so, how far will Shay go to get it? This book's got a lot of trigger warnings in it. Cults, obviously, is a big one. A lot of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. It's a heavy book. I wouldn't recommend going into it if you're thinking if it's just going to be a thriller with twists and turns. Nah, this is like psychological kind of crap. So much so that it really talks about the kind of infrastructure of men versus women, in particular, like kind of like biblical, if you will. In this book, in this cult, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it's a cult that's where men are ruled to thrive, and religion is based upon it. And that's like a lot of cults, honestly. We hear a lot about religious cults and how men are at the top of it. And it's hard for me to read about because I'm religious, and just to see people like this, that do this, that think that they're the best, that kind of view women as like a doorstep, that of just like not even a person, they view women as an object for them to do whatever they want with, is just horrifying to me, because I'm like, that is not how it is. Like, anyway, it's hard. It's a hard book to read. She talks a lot about a really important things, and she also talks about Shay and her feelings of if she enjoyed being in this cult. Did she enjoy those things, or, you know, was she kind of trained to enjoy them? It's freaking wild. Did I enjoy this more than her last book? No, because the last book that I read by her, and the reason for that is because In My Dreams I Hold a Knife was very twist and turny. Like, the whole book about that is trying to solve a murder as well and trying to figure out who done it, but it was very much like a who done it, and you kind of go into the psyche of all these characters that are horrible, and it's kind of, you know, like a college thing, back and forth. This one is definitely a cult-driven book, very kind of men overtaking women, very abusive kind of thing like that. It's a darker book. And with that, that's not to say it's a bad book at all. I just enjoyed the other one more because it was like a true murder mystery, in my opinion, with a lot of character development. This one's just intense. Like, it's an intense book. Overall, I give it a 4 out of 5. It's a book, I might move it up to 4.5 out of 5, because the more I think about it, like when I pull this book out, I remember very vividly my feelings of it and how strong of a plot it had and just how much it really affected me. It might move up to a 5. It was really good. Like, she definitely said, no, I'm not doing that sophomore book slump. Forget that. Technically it's their third book, but it's her second thriller, so that's why I said that. But overall, I would recommend it. Just be in the right headspace for it, because it is an intense one for sure. Moving on to The Butcher by Jennifer Hiller. This is my third book by this author. I read 2 of her previous books. One is Jar of Hearts, which I love, and the other one is her newest release. I don't remember the name of it because I did not like it that much. And we have The Butcher. This one, I feel like Jennifer Hiller is really exploding here on BookTube and Book Talk, whatever you want to call it, and I'm enjoying it. I found out myself. So The Butcher, I enjoyed. So in this book, we have a character named Matt, and he is inheriting this house from his grandfather, Edward Shank, who was like the captain or the previous chief of police. And Matt's really excited to have this house because his grandfather is moving into a retirement home. And then one day, Matt finds a box like buried in the backyard, and it's full of some scary, scary things. And we also have another girl in this. We have Matt's girlfriend. I think her name's Samantha. I read this on ebook, so forgive me. And she is like kind of a true crime writer. She's trying to write a book about this serial killer called The Butcher, if you will. And he was notorious back in the day, and he was caught and he was killed. And Samantha does not think that he is really like that, who they said the butcher was. Is not the butcher. She thinks he's still out there. In fact, she thinks he killed his mom, In fact, she thinks he killed her mom. So we have all that going on. And we also have Edward Shank, like I told you, is the chief of police, the former chief of police. He's the one who found the butcher, and he's famous, and he killed him and all that stuff. So we have all these kind of things going on. And I mean, you can clearly from the beginning, you can tell what's happening. There's a lot of twists and turns at the end, but at the very beginning, you know who the butcher is, you know exactly things like that. Overall, I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. I did not love it as much as Jar of Hearts. I think that's just my favorite one of hers. You know, she writes a lot of dark, twisty stuff as well, kind of on the same bar as Karin Slaughter, if you will. This one I just didn't love as much. Again, the ending was kind of, I wanted a little bit more from that. But it was good. Like, I do like Jennifer Hiller's writing. One thing I'll say about her is she can hook you in. Like, from the very beginning, you are hooked and you want to finish the book immediately, which is good for a thriller because that is a big driving point, I think. So I would recommend this one if you've read her books and you're trying to look for a different one by her. I would recommend it. It just wasn't my favorite. Like, I don't know why. I just love Jar of Hearts by her. I just really, really do. Like I said, I have 2 Katherine Ryan Howard books. The main reason I wanted to check out Katherine Ryan Howard is because of her newest one, Runtime. This one just got released and the plot sounded really interesting to me. But then I heard about her other one, The Nothing Man. And these books, I kind of have the same feelings on them, but I will say these 2 books have some of the best kind of plots I've ever heard of in thrillers. So The Nothing Man is a book within a book. So in this book, you have a character named Eve Black, who at the age of 12, her home gets attacked by the Nothing Man, a serial killer that kills her mom, her dad, and her sister, but Eve has been left unscathed and she's kind of been the only survivor. And so she decides to write a book about the Nothing Man called The Nothing Man. So we have that going on. Then we have a guy named Jim who's a security guard at like a store, and then one day he sees a book called The Nothing Man and he's like, oh crap, because he is the Nothing Man. So that's right, we got 2 books within one here. So in this book, we actually have Eve's story, and you can tell the difference because it'll say chapter 1 and it'll say the Nothing Man by Eve Black, and so that's when we're getting actually into Eve's book. And then when we go back to Jim's perspective, it will actually say, it'll just say Katherine Ryan Howard, The Nothing Man. So we have a serial killer reading a book about him. Like, that's freaking wild. That's an amazing plot. Like, I was like, this is so intriguing. So I did enjoy this book overall. It's definitely my favorite Katherine Ryan Howard book I've read so far. But again, the ending with a lot of these books I'm talking about today just didn't wow me. It kind of went out with a whimper, not like a bang that I usually like with thrillers. And it also, the part where Eve was trying to figure out who the Nothing Man was, it got kind of muddled down. It was too detective-y for my case. Like, I didn't enjoy it in that aspect. Like, the middle part of it, I was kind of like, this is kind of dragging. I don't love it as much. But overall, the whole plot of a serial killer finding a book about him and reading it is crazy, isn't it? Like, it sounds so cool. I love that aspect. But I would recommend this one, especially if you're a fan of like books within books. Like I said, I would probably give this one a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I think my favorite part of it was the whole plot of it was very intriguing to me. And then my last book is Runtime, also by Katherine Ryan Howard. This one disappointed me a ton. Again, this one is so intriguing. So this one is like a book in a book in a book. So she said, I'll take my book within a book and raise you a book in a book in a book. I don't know what she's going to do next. We're going to have 5 books in one. Who knows? This one, oh gosh, this is so hard to explain. Just forgive me. We have a character named Adele, who is an actress, and she was born in Ireland. She was in a soap opera. Things were going well, and then it wasn't. So she kind of moved to LA to kind of give a fresh start, and she's not doing that well. And she gets offered this job for this movie called Final Draft being filmed in Ireland in the middle of nowhere. So she's like, great, that's an awesome opportunity. I'll go. And so she goes, you know, to back home to Ireland in the middle of nowhere to film this movie called Final Draft. So she gets there and she learns more about what the movie Final Draft is about. So Final Draft, the movie, is about 2 characters named Kate and Joel. They go to a cottage in the middle of nowhere to kind of get away, have a romantic weekend together. They're both kind of writers, and when they get there, Kate finds a book called Final Draft, and it's about two characters with the initial K and J. And the final draft book that she finds is creepy, about two characters that go again to the middle of nowhere to a cottage for a romantic vacation, and scary things start happening. So see how it's kind of like a book within a book. We have Adele starring in a movie about Final Draft, then we have characters that are in Final Draft reading a book. You know, it's a lot, but it's intriguing, I'll say that. And in this book, you get the script of Final Draft in there with the two characters named Kate and Joel, which honestly was my favorite part. I wish the book would have really focused on that, not even the Adele thing, because they really failed on the horror movie aspect. I think what drew me to this book was the fact of it was about a horror movie being made. I was like, that is so freaking cool. I want to check that out. That sounds intriguing, but it didn't really do it for me. Like, they could have done so much more with it. They could have ramped up on the kind of spookiness, on the seclusion, that's the word. But she just didn't. It just kind of failed for me on all fronts. This one I would give a 3. I was just like, crap. I was very disappointed in it. I thought it just could have been so much more. In fact, like I said, I just wanted the script Final Draft to be the actual book and to be made full flesh into a book instead of what we got, because it was just such a letdown. Even the big plot twist, I was like, oh gosh, really? And the ending, I was like, oh. But I mean, it is what it is. Again, like, both of these have great plots. Like, A++ on Katherine Ryan Howard for coming up with great plot ideas for books. She wins. They both are very intriguing. We have a book about a guy that's a serial killer that finds a book about himself. Then we have a book within a book within a book, a character going to a horror movie and learning that the script is maybe becoming real because things start happening to her. Like, it's just, it sounds so interesting, but the execution was just horrible on it. But, you know, it goes how it goes. So those are all the 5 thriller books I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to share my thoughts. So if you are interested in reading these books, please do so if you want to. I would love to know if I persuaded you to do so. And if you have read them, please let me know your thoughts and feelings on them. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.